Hi, I'm Ed Sperling. I'm the editor-in-chief of Semiconductor Engineering. I'm over at Cliosoft with Marios Karatzias. We're going to talk today about boosting the performance of data management systems. So, Marios, what sort of problems are you trying to solve?
You see, as design complexity increases, we see the trend that IP reuse is becoming an integral part of the design development itself. We are developing solutions and even products that are revolving around this trend to basically reuse IP as much as possible. For example, we have a tool which is basically aiming to catalog the IPs, reuse the IPs. It's a web-based platform to trace the IP, see where it is being consumed, etc. We're also having in our data management solution cross-project references to make reuse of IP as smooth and as optimized as possible. Today, I would like to discuss with you a new feature called Sparse Populate, which is aiming to create work areas instantly so that we can boost the entire performance of the data management system.
So, let's take a closer look.
Absolutely, thank you.
So, Marios, what's the typical problem that people run into when they're trying to improve the performance?
So one of the core things that we're trying to look after is basically optimizing the performance and the resources of the system. One of the core places that we can look at to do that is basically the work area creation, where traditionally each user's work area would have a big chunk of data duplicated from the main location where the data will be stored. So this leads to excessive duplication of data that probably doesn't need to be there for each user to modify. It can be basically read-only data. Now, what we have seen across almost 2 decades now is basically the fact that we can take advantage of this situation that the data doesn't need to be modifiable in each user's work area, and we have developed a links to cache approach. So we have basically the user's work area and our cache database, where basically each file in the work area is a link to the cache where the actual data is physically present, and only when a user wants to modify something, they check it out so they get a physical copy in their work area.
You've got a lot of IP in some of these designs. How do you improve the management of this, the understanding about what's there and how to optimize it?
That's an excellent question. Basically, in cases where we have read-only IPs, IPs that do not need to be modified a lot, and this is basically something we have seen across the board with many of our customers, we can have a single link from our work area to the top-level directory that is residing in a sparse work area in the cache. So instead of having symbolic links from the work area to each individual file, we have a single symbolic link pointing to the top node of the IP, or it can be a subdirectory of the IP as well.
So really what you're doing here is you're taking advantage of whatever real estate's already there and optimizing the use of that real estate, right?
Uh, that is a way to put it. So we're basically enhancing the existing technology of the cache to basically optimize in the case of read-only IPs or even PDKs or any kind of data that is not required to be modified often.
Why was this not done in the past?
That's a good question, where everything is a work in progress, but the reuse IP trend is becoming more and more frequent in the design development. That's what we see across the board, and basically the need is driving the feature development, and this is what we're looking at today.
And this is partly because these chips are becoming increasingly heterogeneous, right? You've got more chiplets, you've got more IP, you've got more interactions between them.
Actually, that is the case, and we are all aware that some vendors are optimizing specific portions of the design. So you might have vendors that are providing you with IP that is aiming for low power or for high performance, and in general, this leads to a lot of read-only IPs being consumed by specific companies. And this is basically what the sparse work area is addressing here, because usually the people that are utilizing or consuming the IP do not need to modify that.
And in an automotive space, for example, you may have IP that needs to be exactly that version 20 years from now, right?
That is the case, and specifically now that you mentioned automotive, in optimized design development, we have a lot of continuous integration going on with products such as Jenkins and platforms like that. SOS, the the data management solution from Cliosoft, is integrating and talking to the systems. And this continuous integration typically requires a lot of work area creation to be in batch mode, and there is where the performance of a feature like sparse populate is really kicking in because of the optimized way that the work area has been created. The work area has been created, there's a top level link to the IP that is read-only, and the files that are being modified can be populated the usual way, specifically with links to the cache.
What kind of issues do you have in actually administering this?
Right, so this is a good question. It's not so much about the issues, but about the opportunities. Using our new web-based platform for administration, which is called SOS Manager, the admins of the system can basically specify what each user has in their work area. So user A might be a consumer of this IP, so they will be sparsely populating the IP in their work area, but user B might need to tweak it, so they would be populating this IP in the traditional links to cache approach. Again, not consuming extra disk space with the links to cache, but the sparse populate is optimizing the population, the sync to the repository, because it is a single link pointing to the IP instead of tens of thousands of links pointing to the individual files.
Do you foresee this rolling out into a lot of different industries? For example, mil-aero, things like that, where they need this kind of history on the IP over years?
Absolutely. This feature actually would be, in my opinion, agnostic to the industry, but definitely for whatever company and whatever design team is requiring some optimization in their overall flow, in the data management flow. This is the next big thing for population, and this is definitely something that they would need to look at.
Marios Karatzias, thanks for a great explanation.
Thank you, Dad.